I mean, there are people who don't get as attached or involved with their characters as I do, but I always think, this is a part of me at some extent. I have imagined myself acting in that capacity of somebody doing something quite terrible. Um, Not imagining myself doing in the capacity of doing something quite terrible, but imagining what it may be like from that perspective. There's certain things certainly certain characters do that I would never ever contemplate, um, or even be able to contemplate. But how I sort of imagine somebody who could contemplate them, could do them, would contemplate them, do them. There's definitely parts of me in every single one of my characters, including the reprehensible ones. There's, I think that's, if you're not doing that to some extent, then you're losing the honesty there. Like, you have to at least get your audience to be able to imagine that they would do something similar in a similar circumstance. It doesn't mean that they would, it doesn't mean that they agree with it or believe in it, but that they would understand in the moment why somebody might make the decision to do something. I think I go a little further in the way that I tend to envision things. With actors, because a lot of the time, or not actors, I do it in a sort of actorly way to get down to certain motivation. So like I sort of refer to it as kind of like an inverted pyramid. I don't like this shit. Let me first just say this, as the person who uncovered the story diamond, which is just a chaos of OCD. If you look at it, it's really disturbing. My boyfriend called it the plot pussy. I called it a story snatch because it looks like a diamond. But so I don't really like graphic representations, but this is sort of the easiest thing I can think of for when you're discussing motive, objective. This is, my handwriting really is that bad. I think about the characters and I begin with the most kind of intellectualized motive at the top here to the most like fundamental. So if you imagine an argument going on, say your partner and you are getting in an argument, those are always the worst because that's the person you care about the most, and you go from a place of wanting to make an intellectual point. So like, I don't know, like let's see, like, I don't know, anything like calling it an advance or something, or like calling when you'll be late, and how it's disruptive. It's disruptive of all your plans, and that it shows a greater disrespect towards stuff. And you can go and you can formulate those very broad arguments. Your motive is to make that person do what exactly? Follow through. Like, that can try and be your motive, is to make them follow through. But what you're really doing is you're trying to get them down here. You want them to admit that they're guilty. That they are wrong and that you are right, and that they are very, very sorry, and that they should do what you say. However, that's kind of story pussy. Yes. That's the best tweet I've ever done, possibly. Thank the subreddit, our screenwriting mod queue for that, because because it got spammed out, otherwise I wouldn't have found it. Okay, back to the fucking, I don't know, whatever, like, sexual metaphor we want to add to this. Okay, so yeah, you're in an argument with your partner. You want them to stop failing to call when they'll be late. You want them to respect the way that you've organized your time and all this other stuff, whatever. By the way, you should, what is it, Rachel, what is her last name? She's the one who did, My Crazy Ex-Girlfriend. She just did a script notes episode. You should with them, you should listen to it. Okay, yeah, right. So, basic genius of the argument: you want them to do the thing you want them to do, and you want them to do it. And well, what you're really trying to do is you're also kind of trying to punish them. You want them to admit that they're wrong and apologize and never do it again. And it's a bit about control down here, because every argument is a bit about control. Down here, though, is when the argument has gotten really, really bad, and everything is out of proportion, and it's really about something completely different at this point. And it just hurts. It's just ugly, and it just hurts, and you want it to never have happened, and you are willing to give up all of your points and to let go of everything, just if they will put their arms around you and, maybe say sorry. Just be like, look, we're okay. Whatever happened up here, I need you to make it okay down here. So this is that's a very sort of actory way of thinking of things. But I find it really, really helpful for my characters, because I often really struggle, especially in these big ensemble pieces. People, when their motivations can get lost, especially my protagonist, who I have the hardest time. Someone who wants to do something positive rather than take something away from someone else. It's harder for some reason. And she's not exactly a heroic hero or anything like that, but she does have that sort of careening headlong into things, getting ahead to make adjustments so that the places where she gets herself captured, she actually, at least one or two of them, she decides to get herself captured as a stratagem. So it's important for her to have this core base towards everybody. This isn't just their overall feeling. This is the feeling that how they interact with every single other character, especially if there's an ensemble. Fuck, I gotta go find that because that's too good. But the story diamond thing. Jesus Christ, that guy. I kind of worry about him a little bit. I hope he's okay. I think he's not okay. But anyway, to get to the point here is that this is the thing. This is playable. This is where it gets playable. This is a playable action for an actor. It's a thing they can do. You can go and put your arms around somebody. They can, they can act. It's an action. They can act on it. It's not telling them to feel something, which is all the other stuff. All this other stuff is about feelings. And, intellectualizing our feelings until we get down to that area where we admit our biases, and or we don't admit our biases, and they turn into an action here. And the action could be embrace, it could be violence, it could be sexual, it could be cowardice, it could be a lot of things. So, and again, that's something where if I know, for instance, that, yeah, Vikram's motivation up here is to better the world because, somebody has to, because people are suffering, because we could have another world that is, that is better than the world that currently exists, and that he really believes that, and he's been committed to that his entire life, even before this whole disaster destroyed his status and his position as, a young superstar of diplomacy. Down here, where biases live, where the desire to control is, he truly believes he is the best possible person to do this, to accomplish this, and that anybody who disagrees with him is counter not only to his ideals, but also to him, and needs to be eliminated. That's where he lives. Down here, what he really wants, it's hard to say because it's going to depend on the person. For his sister, he wants his sister to, what does he want her to do? What is the action that, what does he want to do? Again, things better than thinking of it that way, because Rachel abhors the person that she now knows him to be. Does he want her forgiveness more or her approval more? Because what that's going to say about him is where his respect for her really lies. And does he love his sister more than he, loves his ambitions? But the actual physical thing, there is a moment later, much later, where he does the inner part of him that can't think anymore but can only act breaks down, and he, knowing that she knows everything about his guilt and everything that he's done, that all the mistakes and all the things he's done on purpose, he breaks down and like basically falls to her feet and cries on her shoes and begs for forgiveness. And that is this point down here. So it lives with him all of the time. Other characters are simpler. Other characters have, and this can change, and this does change. But the thing is, if I know this about him, and I didn't get to it right away, but especially if I know what's going to happen, and at some point it does have to happen. This action bit has to happen. I know what's going to be the bedrock under every single scene between them from that point, because he goes from being her like most fierce protector. He's the only other person who has the same amount of brilliance and genius and kind of disabling capacity for infinite memory, or close to it, and they're the only two people in the whole world who live like that, and understand that about each other. And he's taken care of her and helped her with her issues from the time she was born, literally, because he's the older brother, but also he understood and knew at a very early age how traumatic it could be to be in his own head. So to have that, the betrayal is at the core of their relationship, and his needing her, he begging is your active verb there, to beg forgiveness of her, is the thing that fuels everything else moving up here. So, this is the rage that he feels, that he can't have both this, and he can't have this. This is where bias lives for him, and the ego, because he can intellectualize all he wants, but at the end of the day, this is the thing that hurts him. So yeah, that's kind of my character motive pyramid. I don't know. I need to come up with a stupid name that is stupid. And yeah, it's not gonna go. I don't know, the fucking Jesus, the objective bush. Like, I don't know. Yeah, I'm clearly starting to lose it here. Yeah, that's I don't know. That's the thing that's worth discussing. Sometime I'll come up with a slightly more. I mean, it's not an automatic way to solve a scene. It's more like, look, all of this advice. I am not a guru. I just, I prefer to give my advice in context. You send me a script, I will read it. I will tell you what I think in the context of your characters. I will take them seriously if you take them seriously. And I'm not going to publish a book anytime soon, because I frankly think that in a lot of cases, they are just pages with words that people write to sell stuff. I mean, how much do you pay? That's the thing for that. That's I just gave you that. I didn't take that from anywhere, but I'm sure that it has some fundamentals that are in common with some existing theory. I just know that that's a checklist. That is just a graphic representation of a checklist that I use to try and solve problems. I think about scenes that are not working in the sense of solving them. Because the other thing too is that story structure is, I'm going to quote Craig Mason right out here and just say that it is a symptom of character, and that everything is character, and character's the only thing that matters, because you don't get to have any of the other things without it. But structure itself is, once you have some story, structure itself is more about fitting a jigsaw puzzle together than it is about following a tangent. So, you've got to recarve your puzzle pieces in order to fit them properly. And those are the province of character, and that if your character doesn't know, and that's usually the main reason that you're going to have story problems, is because your character doesn't, it's not even that they don't know what they want. They don't need to know. Like, Vikram does not know in episode 1 when he is, when he has accidentally poisoned his own mother to death by throwing diseased dead bodies into the water supply in an attempt to kill all the weak people down below. He doesn't know at that time that by episode 8 he'll be begging forgiveness of, his sister for everything he has done along this point. He doesn't know that he's going to do that, but that is, the seed is there for him. Just as with Sergei, who's a much simpler character. He's really just out there to fight and fuck and kill and blow people up and break their necks and kill them with knives and all other sort of, fancy ways. His one thing that he does have is he has a thing for Rachel, and that's the only real human feeling that he has that's actually legitimate, and the only reason that he feels that way is because she's been in his life long enough to make an imprint. I don't know how sociopaths really reckon that sort of thing. They tend to be very ego-based. He's a very, very kind of classic sadist in that sense, but like, for him, his actions are simpler to... So say Vikram, intellectually, he knows Vikram supplies him and his army, which is important because they have control of the dam. So that's like his thing. He knows that he wants to take control of that, and his sister. And that's not even an intellectual thing on his choice. That's almost like as a bias thing. Like, that's just so obvious because he's a black hat villain. He's quite flat. In that sense, he know, like, when you first meet him, that this is not a tenable situation, this partnership between them. And Vikram knows this too, like, and Sergei knows this too. It's all about an arrangement of convenience. What he wants to do, what Sergei wants to do, because what Sergei wants to do with anybody is just beat the fuck out of him, torture him, take his power away. That's a very, very, very flat motivation, which means I don't have a heart. That's probably one of the reasons I love Sergei so much, and I come back to him so often, because he's so easy to write, because he doesn't want anything important. He doesn't want anything complex. He just wants to party and do things that are awful. But yeah, then, again, when I'm talking about characters like Rachel, where there's more intersection because she's the protagonist, and then I've got to deal with her and all the other characters. They need to all know, they need to have an idea of what they want from each other, and then they have to have a core, driving, irresistible, inevitable need of each other, of what they want from each other. So, or to do to each other, or to do with each other, or to do at each other. I mean, it's about finding the thing that is active. You can actuate your scene based on that active need, and that's where writers live, and that's where actors live, and where they live together, that's how you can make things work. At least that's how I can make things work. Anyway, yeah, no, you get that for free. Hooray! You don't owe me anything, but you do have to go give Craig Mazin $10 because I didn't ask his permission, and I'm, you get the idea. I have a lot of distrust of people who it's not so much consultants, it's not people, if people actually can show their work and say, look, here's all the notes that I gave you in your stuff, and here's my opinions, and here's the, I actually did the work, I read it, and I left some kind of, I gave you some directives and some suggestions and things you could act on. That's different. But for people who are just like, here's my system, it's like, no, there's no system. You just do it. And if you can't get a first draft down, then fuck off, because I don't really care about your ideas. I just want to see your draft. I can do things with your draft. So yeah, that's the thing.